accurate. And Lauren,
Rick was not absent for the meeting. He was just at the very end of it.
Oh, at the very end. Yes.
Yeah, right.
So we'll correct
that. I was there by teleconference. I called in.
But did you leave before the meeting had ended, or do you think you were there through the?
You know what? I don't care whether that's in the minutes or not. I don't remember. Okay. It's really not worth the time we're talking about it.
All right.
Change the minutes.
That's fine.
Jesus.
We'll do a quick look, David, and just adjust that.
Thanks, Lauren.
Okay, I'm going to leave again.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else have any issues with the consent action items?
No. I'd like to make a motion. We approve the consent agenda 1 through 9 with the correction to tab 6 about whatever it was. And I'd like to move we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it. But do we have to have public comment on any of them?
Is there any public comment on consent? No. Okay. Roll call.
Vice President Diamond.
Yes.
Director Hetherington.
Yes.
Director Odette is absent. President Rolfe.
Yes.
And Director Stevens.
Yes.
All right, moving on to item 10, approval of resolution 2022 Jedi Vision and Mission. Is there any public comment on action item 10? Okay, Hardy, do you want to speak to this?
Yes, excuse me, I certainly can. This is an item that was brought forward in the March meeting, and the board directed staff to make a few additions to the document, essentially widening the scope of coverage to include all different forms of prejudice and racism that would apply to ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, age, physical ability, different things like this. The document is in your package, and there were some minor semantic changes. Those are highlighted in yellow, but essentially it remains unchanged. And so that's, before the board tonight for approval. We thought it was quite comprehensive, and it covers what we believe was the spirit of the discussion that the board had. So I'd offer that up, answer any questions you may have. I think the board should be proud of the work that they've done on this. And with that, I'll answer any questions you have for me.
If I could add just one thing to that also, that there was direction by the board to create a policy that essentially the district wants to do business with people that aspire to meet these standards. That policy is coming. It takes a little more work than to make sure it meets all the dynamics that a policy such as that needs to entail. So we plan on bringing that back in May. That particular thing, working with Josh and with Hardy. So.
All right, Rick, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I do not.
All right, Mary?
No.
David?
I do. I think we should hold off on Jedi. I would like to see Jedi serve as a master policy for all of the related considerations there, whether it's what Kevin had just mentioned that has not been added to that, or whether it be something that could be referred to from other policies. Right now in some of our other policies, we do have specific language about this. And I feel like we might be better off having a master document that defines our positions on this, and then refer to that master document in other policies. So I would like to hold off on approving this until we can roll that, what Kevin was talking about, into this policy, so that we don't have multiple different policies that are saying similar things, and that we might be able to consider using this as a policy that we point to from the other policies.
Okay. Hardy, do you have any response to that?
No, we did give it some thought on the procurement policy. It threads through both our internal policy documents and also the way that the FAA uses their non-discriminatory type of purchasing. And what judgment the board has to make decisions on procuring things for the airport. So there is additional research we need to do there, but it's, again, essentially entirely up to the will of the board. If you want to wait, we could try and bring forward a more comprehensive policy that met Director Diamond's wishes and work with him, directly to try and make sure it's something that is going to fit for everybody. We're happy to do that.
And David and I talked about this a little bit, and I get what he's talking about. And like, you can go to PI 311 and it's got some of this language. And so I'm happy to work with Hardy and Rob to have something that you can, and Josh is gonna have to help us with that, that you could bring back, and it shouldn't take, should be able to come back in May, if that's the desire of the group.
But I'm just understanding that you see a policy instruction as much more forceful than a resolution.
Here's what I'm looking at, Mary. So if you read some of the other policies, I hesitate to mention 311 because it's another agenda item. But if you read some of other policies, there is language in there about our requirements, that we don't discriminate against religious groups and that whole thing. And I would love to see that all in one place. That could be pointed to instead of each policy having its own version of this. Each policy says that the policy that follows is assumes that in adherence to policy XYZ, which defines the district's position with regard to what we require and what we avoid in that sense. I just feel like from a policy perspective, it would be much cleaner if we could reference master policies on these concerns instead of adding that language into everything, knowing that each time it might be a different version, and then we have a question of which version holds true.
Okay.
Okay, is everybody okay with going back to the drawing board with this? Coming back in May?
I'm fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's
Okay.
consensus, that's fine. Yeah.
Great. Okay, thank you, Hardy, for all the work you've done on this, and David, for your consideration as well. Okay, number 11. Fly quiet incentive to replace home basing incentive. Is there any public comment on this tab? Okay. Who took the lead on this? This was David, wasn't it?
The fly quiet to be Hardy.
Hardy. Okay.
Yes, thanks. The curfew incentive options staff report is in the board packet for the public listening in tonight, and also the board that's reviewed it. Essentially, our voluntary curfew is designed to curtail operations after 10 p.m. or before 7 a.m. An airport does not have the right to mandatorily restrict operations during the nighttime period, so we choose to incentivize them in a number of different ways, and we also do a pretty robust outreach and education program around that. So all of our publications, all of our aeronautical publications in the 56-day cycle, electronic flight bags, meetings, and all the collateral we have is all geared toward making sure that people do not fly after 10 p.m. or before 7. The airport currently has 2 incentive tiers within the hangar rent discount program that incentivizes staying and flying within that daytime period and not flying at night. The first one is a Fly Quiet 1 incentive, and that's 2 cents per square foot per month, restricting operations between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. You make a promise to the airport that you will not fly after 11 p.m. or before 6 a.m. The next one is the Fly Quiet 2 incentive, which also, again, it duplicates 2 cents per square foot per month reduction, and it voluntarily restricts your operations that you promise not to fly after 10:30 or before 6:30 a.m. The presentation before you tonight is really looking at the next step, the next iteration in that voluntary program, trying to incentivize pilots and hangar attendants not to fly after 10 p.m. or before 7 a.m.
Hardy, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I completely forgot. I need to recuse myself on this because I'm a hangar tenant. I apologize for this. So I'm just going to make myself go away, and can somebody text me when you're done with this? I'm so sorry. I completely forgot about this.
No problem.
I will text you, David.
And then there's also the airport extends a home basing incentive of 4 cents per square foot per month to registered aircraft that have an aircraft of record inside a hangar, and you attest that your aircraft is based within the domicile county of your hangar, which we have 2 counties, Placer and Nevada County. And so that's really designed to enhance the registered number of aircraft on an airfield, which is a common practice in making a vibrant, well-formed airport that's using the facilities. Airplanes are coming and going. They're using maintenance facilities. And so tonight we talk a little bit about alternatives the board may have to look at handling some of these things a little bit differently. And again, the goal is really to incentivize. There's no punitive action involved in this. There's no punitive monetary value associated with any type of flying at any time of the day. We just are trying to incentivize people to not fly after 10 p.m. or before 7. And I'll mention that 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. is aligned with many California day-night equivalent noise standards, and that could be through local ordinance, it could be through state policy, it could be through CCNRs, but essentially that's pretty highly aligned within California that you don't want to make a lot of noise after 10 p.m. or before 7. I will mention that right now in the current structure, we get a very, very, very high rate of compliance. If you measured us in grade-wise, we're like a 99%. Most of our activity does not fly after 10 p.m. or before 7 a.m. And you'll see the numbers in the staff report. I'm not going to go through them piece by piece, but what we don't want to do is make a change to the program and force a pilot who was willing to stay grounded at 6:30 in the morning, and then push it to 7 a.m. and all of a sudden he says, I'm not willing to lose the utility of my aircraft, so now I'm going to fly whenever I want. That's what we don't want to do. And if you look at our data from the airport, if you look at the time of day for the aircraft that operate in the nighttime period, you'll see them highly aligned near 10:30 and near 6 a.m. and 6:30. So we know the curfew incentive program is working because most of our operations are aligned in those 2 periods. In your staff report, there's 2 tables. The first table chronicles the financial the financial implications of the current program. The second table has a future structure, and the second table is staff's best guess at a good idea or a framework that may help us get to that 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. value and carry more people who want to use that incentive program to not fly after 10 or before 7. So the values in the future structure plan on page 2 of the staff report are really flexible because we don't know the number of participants who will take the take rate on the new program. We also understand that it's the board's prerogative to change the incentive amounts related to each Fly Quiet program. So for example, in the table you have Fly Quiet 1, and Chair Rolfe, would you like me to put this on my screen?
7 a.m.
Okay. I will go ahead and do that. So if you can see my cursor, the future structures down here, the incentive amount, 1 cent, 2 cent, and 4 cent, is essentially open to the board to use, and the number of participants that go from the current categories of FQ1 and FQ2 that move into potentially an FQ3 scenario would then determine what figure. Right now, just on simple math, we used 100 people, so obviously the math is right there for you. But so this is open for discussion, and what we'd like to do also is talk about the home basing incentive. We currently do not see a lot of value from the airport in using and continuing to use the home base incentive, particularly when we have a high number of itinerant and non-locally based aircraft at our airport. So we wanted to put that into another incentive tier where we could move people into the FQ3 incentive tier and offer that up for the board as a way to, from a financial perspective, the amount that the district is, the foregone revenue is essentially the same between the two programs. That will affect some of our tenants, and we just want to be very transparent about that. But with that, I'll open it up for any questions you may have and talk about the staff report or anything specific.
So I have a comment in that right now, people who sign up for all this get 8 cents a square foot, and I'd like to keep it at that. So I'd like to see 1 cent, 2 cent, and 5 cents, that I'm willing to pay 5 cents a square foot for that extra hour of time. I think that's a big care about for the community. So I would like to move that to instead of a 1, 2, and 4 to a 1, 2, and 5 cent. I would propose that.
I like that, Mary. You're paying more for the critical hour.
Right. This is all for Bates, for hangar tenants. It's an incentive. And I appreciate the work you're putting into this, Hardy, because I think it would be valuable to the community. Kat, you're muted, Kat.
Okay, but my question is,
you said that that the home base is problematic because there aren't that many, because there's so many people from out of area, but 126 home base participants seems pretty high.
Oops, am I muted? Sorry about that. It is. We just, as we get larger aircraft, more of those aircraft are not registering as home based, and we also are not actually seeing the direct benefit back to the community for that portion. And so that's why we propose using that home base piece, shifting it to the FQ3 piece.
I see. Okay.
And we don't have a problem. Go ahead, Kevin.
It might be good just to, because we have a lot of people, there's 40 something people here, that the home basing, what that was intended to do is have tenants declare that the plane is based here with our two counties, so that the county gets to keep possessory interest on those aircraft, and that the revenue stays in the county rather than maybe somebody basing the aircraft in the Bay Area or Southern California or somewhere else. So the airport actually doesn't get that money, but it was staying here locally. And so what we're saying is, let's remove that and then do it. Maybe some might argue is the same or a better incentive to give it for flight quiet incentives rather than the home basing. The home basing goes back to like 2007. It goes back a long time. And if I didn't have that right, someone correct me.
Okay. Rick, did you have any questions or comments?
No, I just liked Mary's attitude or suggestion. Pardon me.
Jason, yeah. Yeah, I like it too.
Sounds like 3 votes and 1 can't vote. Number 4.
That's right.
So you're going to have to do something with this, Hardy. You want to do public outreach to the pilot community to so they understand. But for the local based tenants, it keeps them whole. If they're already signed up for all 3 things, they're getting 8 cents a square foot per month off. And this would keep them whole if they continued to participate in all 3 options.
Yeah,
The options are different.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, Director Hetherington. That is correct, and I do want to do some vigorous outreach to the pilot community and get their feedback in return with that before we have a final decision. I think it would come with a modification of the policy instruction that outlines this type of activity, and then we could bring back the results of the outreach at the same time if that works for the board.
And can you do that by May, the May meeting? Because going into the summer, this is a big deal.
Yeah, I would say that with the staff changes and the lack of staff at this point, that would probably be ambitious for us, but I think June would be possible.
Because, June, I just, knowing that we're going into summer, and summer can start early June, and, it might not start till August, but it's a big deal, that extra hour, and it's motivating. So I would push you to please work on it, aiming for May.
Okay, very well.
So no motion now, Mary?
Oh, yes, we'll make a motion. Do you want to?
Don't we looking for a motion, Kevin or Hardy? Correct me. I think it was just direction.
I think
Yeah, we have it as an action item, but if we can do this by consensus. It sounds like the three of you, there's consensus to do a 1, 2, and then 5. Or the 5 cents there for the third fly quiet, and then I'll get with Hardy. We'll see if we can prep this for the May meeting. Part of that, we just want to make sure that we're giving, as we know, we want to make sure that the pilot community has an opportunity to digest this also, but understand that summer is coming and that it would be good to try and make this opportunity available sooner than later,
Right.
so that people can take advantage of it if they want to. And so yes, we'll meet and talk on that, but I think we have what we need on that consensus.
Can I tell David to come back?
Yes, please.
Okay, moving on. Oh, should we wait for David?
I sent the text.
Okay.
I'm just curious, kick him off again, but as an action item, can't we take action?
You could take action if you'd like, yes.
So we could actually institute it.
Yeah, you could institute it. It's going to be one of those things, and that it's going to be really up to you on how much pilot outreach you want to do out there. I mean, we've had this out there for a week, or since Friday, and I would suggest giving it a 30-day period for people to be able to review it and look at it and get input, but it's kind of up to you. If you want to institute it sooner than later, you can. You can always modify it later if there is some kind of a concern or opposition to it. But you have that option to take action.
I'd like to give some more time to get this out there. I don't like it when the board makes decisions and everybody finds out about it later, how it's going to affect them. I like this idea of rolling it out and making sure that the pilots understand what's going on before it actually
I'd recommend that too.
goes.
Okay. But I do think it needs to be done before summer really hits. If we wait till June, there's a hard push for that. Thank you for that clarity.
Okay, we're still waiting for David.
There he is.
Back.
Oh, there he is. Okay, awesome. All right. Item number 12, policy instruction 317, nonprofit agreements for service.
This is my item. As you recall, when we went through and talked about and modified PI 311, there was one of the action items from there was to bring back a policy instruction for agreements for service with public agencies and nonprofits. To kind of clarify that, when we're asking nonprofits to do work that we typically would hire our own staff to do, they're in the policy instruction, it gives various examples. So we've put this together. This language has kind of lived within PI 311 for a number of years. As we went through that, we thought, that probably needs to be pulled out. It's kind of a different thing. So we've created this draft PI 317 to deal with those kind of items. And so just with that, I put it out there for any board questions or comments or anything like that.
All right, Mary, you want to go first?
No.
Okay.
I want to hear what the other thoughts are first.
All right, David. I know you have thoughts.
Hi, I have a few thoughts. One is just a housekeeping item on the section that says applicability to PI 311 community sponsorships and agency partnerships. It has a last line in that paragraph that says organizations that have an active annual or multi-year agreement for services under this policy will not be eligible for agency partnership consideration under policy instruction 311. I feel like the first sentence is adequate to cover what we're talking about, and the second sentence limits the scope of this to 311. In the future, there could be another policy under which that first sentence was applicable. So I would just suggest that we pull out that that organizations that have active annual blah 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 sentence, because I think it's covered under the previous sentence there.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So yeah, that's it. Yeah, I have some other minor stuff, but not anything. I would rather hear what everybody else has to say before I nitpick at anything.
All right, Rick.
No comment.
Okay.
He wants to hit the beach. No, you're not at the beach.
The links, I think.
The links.
I appreciate the work that's been done on this. I think this is specific and really takes into account all the current understandings that we have with the nonprofits. And I don't really see anything else about it. Mary?
I'd like to get it in place. There's some concerns I have long-term, how it interacts with 311, but I think it's good to get this, down, and then maybe we'll have to look at it again.
Okay.
But I would approve it as is.
All right. David, you want to go ahead and nitpick since the rest of us are done?
No, in fact, I'm ready to support this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And keeping in mind, this is an ongoing policy. I mean, we worked on 311. We had a few iterations of 311, and we may have to revisit it after our next grant cycle, but or community sponsorship cycle. Sorry. But I think it's a really good place to start, and I think it's better than it was before. And does anybody want to make a motion to approve this?
I move. Go ahead, Mary.
Okay.
I move to approve the request to adopt PI 317 as amended by removal of that sentence. Agreements for services with public agencies and nonprofits to define and establish policy for entrance into agreements for service with other public agencies and or nonprofit groups.
I'll second.
Is there any public comment? All right, roll call.
Vice President Diamond,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes.
Director Odette. Absent, sorry. President Rolfe,
Yes.
and Director Stevens.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Okay, moving along. Item number 13, approve employment agreement for interim general manager. Very excited to introduce Rob Etnier, who's agreed to be our interim general manager.
Who's here?
Is he? Yeah, he's here somewhere.
He's here.
Oh, there he is. He's got his beautiful backdrop.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the board's confidence. I look forward to working with the board, the team in place there, and the community at large.
Awesome. So, Josh, what do we need to do here?
Yeah, just a motion to approve the draft agreement, and just for the public's information, that agreement was posted on the website and is available. Compensation amounts and terms and conditions are included in the document.
I move we approve that employment document with Rob Entire as interim GM, which is basically for 6 months. That's what the contract says.
I'll second that.
Is there any public comment? Nope. Okay, roll call.
All right, Vice President Diamond,
Very enthusiastic, yes.
Okay. Director Hetherington.
Yes.
Director Odette is absent. President Rolfe.
Yes,
And
welcome.
Director Stevens.
Yes.
And I want to just say that Teresa and I were on the ad hoc committee, and I know that if she were here, she would vote yes as well.
Yeah. Fantastic.
We're very excited.
Yeah, congratulations, Rob. Great to
Okay.
see you again.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Good seeing you too.
Yeah.
Okay. Discussion items and board ad hoc committee reports. Number 14, new landing fee proposal and discussion.
Perfect. Yeah, this is my my item.
Kevin, before you start,
Yeah.
let me just get verification from Josh. I am a pilot. This is so not anywhere near my income category to apply to me, so I don't feel like I need to recuse myself from this, but I defer to you.
Hey, Director Diamond, I agree with you. At this point, it's something that applies to basically the public generally, all pilots, and doesn't require you to recuse yourself. But thank you for checking.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. So when we, as part of our allocation study review, one of the areas that we had talked about, both with our allocation study and then the FBO fee study, and both those are posted with the board book in there, and anyone can go and look at them. We were in the past, our airport has always kind of combined our what we call the transient use fee, which was a kind of a landing fee and a ramp fee that were combined into one fee. And as we did our FBO fee study, we realized that our TU fees are essentially recovering what most airports recover in their ramp fees, and we had really room and a need based on our allocation study to really look closely at adopting landing fees. Now, landing fees are extremely common. Airports from the size of San Carlos has a landing fee, which is an airport much smaller than ours, all the way to the largest international airports. All of them have landing fees, and landing fees are designed to offset costs, not generate revenue. They're designed to offset operating costs for the airport, in that the FAA funds improvements at many airports. Other costs that airports incur to maintain those facilities, you can recover in a landing fee. And so as we went through this process of looking at what our allocation study showed as an appropriate fee or appropriate cost to recover, along with the second review that we had, our engineer, Brandley Engineering, Damon Brandley, did a second analysis based on wear and tear, which is completely independent of our of the allocation study, to give us two different methodologies that we can look at. So a landing fee is typically a fee that a pilot, aircraft owner would pay per 1,000 pounds of max gross takeoff weight. That's the most common standard that is used. And so you can kind of see in there, through the staff report, we give some examples of how this might be applied to different types of aircraft. So the staff went through an analysis of looking at all of the aircraft that we have, and we're recommending a 6,500 pound max takeoff weight standard. And that basically starts around a TBM aircraft. A PC-12 would fit into that category. Some of our medium-sized twins would fit into this category. We basically took all the weight that the airport had in 2021 and came up with this number and this target cost recovery number of about 1.2 million. And that is based on, you can see in the staff report, on the airside allocation summary adjusted net income. And I combined all 3 years, 2018, 19, and 20, and then averaged those three to come up with that 1.2 million. And so what you can see there is we would end up with a landing fee of about $7.14 per 1,000 pounds of MTOW. And so that would be applied to any aircraft that would come, of transient aircraft. So these would be not our base tenants. I am not recommending that you assess a fee on tenants, and I said base tenants. I'm going to say tenants. Just anyone that has a hangar use agreement with the airport. It's extremely uncommon. I only know of one airport that does that, but it's very uncommon to charge a landing fee for aircraft that base at the airport that actually have their location where their hangar at the airport. So, on the third page of the staff report, it kind of takes you through an analysis. You're talking about a $45 the $50 fee for light twin, up to a Global Express, the largest aircraft, would be about $700 for them to come in and use the airport. I also gave you an idea in the staff report of the different types of fees that are charged around the country. And it ranges anywhere from a few dollars up to almost $9 when you get to like an Aspen. So $7.14 would be within that realm of what is charged out there. So charging that fee would essentially help us recover that allocated airside cost based on a 50-50. And those that have been following the allocation study, we use a 90-10, a 50-50. There's 4 different analysis in there. I thought it was appropriate to use an analysis where our towered ADSB costs were spread over essentially our noise and annoyance as well as our airport cost centers. And so you can use different methods and we can adjust those numbers based on that. And I think this is a really good direction for the airport to go. The landing fees are never waived. Airports typically don't waive those. There is waivers that you can do for gallons purchased for ramp fees. I also would suggest, because we're not combining those anymore, that you get rid of the TU language and just go to a ramp fee and a landing fee. And why I suggest that is because that's what it's called everywhere else. When they roll in there, they'll know ramp fee, they'll know landing fee. That's the common vernacular. I also, as you get into the next phase of this, because it's just a discussion item to get some direction, there's 2 ways to collect this fee. One is to use the camera system that we have out there, that Vector we paid for. There's 11 of them out on the airport, and this can be just essentially clicked on, and we could start collecting the fee through Vector. Now, we would end up paying them, and Hardy, what's the fee? I think it's about 12-13%.
I kind of proposed at 14%.
14. So it'd be a 14% fee, which we could build into the, we could build that into the landing fee. But there's about a 14% that they collect, but it's completely automated. We do nothing, and Vector essentially does all the interactions and working with clients. And that could come into, you can talk about that at your next discussion on this of how you'd want to collect that. The other one is that we collect it through our dispatch, our operator, our O&M employees, which I feel like the automation is probably a better way to go. That would be my recommendation, but you could look at these, the other option of collecting it, manually through interactions with the pilots. With the automated system, you can also charge we could collect other things in there like overnight fees and others. But I think that would be a better discussion that you talk about once you've decided on a fee, and then that collection discussion could happen there. But with that, I wanted to put it out there for the board, for the public, for pilots, anyone that's interested in this. Is a big change for our airport. I would argue that we've kind of been doing this, but we've done it a different way. But this is more of a standard way, and it's based off of a lot of data that we've collected over the last year working on our allocation study. So with that, I'll turn it over to the group.
This is Brian McCafferty. Can I make a comment on that, please?
Yeah, we can do public comment now.
Okay. I think this is one of the things where you guys, you do the analysis and you guys are certainly more versed at this than I am. But I will tell you, as a pilot, I would be cautious of the law of unintended consequences of some of the things that I see building at the airport. As we decide to be, one of the highest as far as gas price, and then get into the top tier of landing fee. And if you do have a ramp fee, you risk losing the smaller to mid-use people, and then having the only people that use the airport are the people that don't care about the expense, which is the Global Express guy. So I would just be cautious of pricing yourself out of the market too much as far as raising prices on gas and all the associated fees. I realize it may seem super easy just to say, well, let's just raise it. It's free money. Let's go. But if the operations drop dramatically from any of these issues or a culmination of them, that could create some overall revenue issues for you down the road. Just something you might want to take a look at.
just, I thought you were leaving at 5:30.
Thank you, Brian. Sven Pohl has his hand up.
Yes, hello, and thank you for everyone's time this evening. First off, Kevin, some of your comments were correct. I've just flown across the country, and my plane landed at 6 different airports in the last 3 days and haven't paid a landing fee yet. So while there are certain airports out there that do charge, and it's particularly the more popular airports, not every airport out there charges a landing fee. So I would just take that, statement and really want to reevaluate that. But as the previous speaker suggested, I too am concerned about the direction the board has taken. It's a death by 1,000 cuts. And while some board members may feel that eliminating aviation in its entirety is probably appropriate, I would hope that the balance of the board really has a view to promote or at least keep aviation as part of the baseline issue of why the airport is there. Between the increased fuel costs and the fact that there are no discounts there, now landing fees, ramp fees, tie-down fees, and the approach that the board has taken on the ground leases there, most of the aviation users on that airport are under duress, financial duress, in order for the airport to raise funds. And the question I'd have is the airport starving for funds? Or my impression, or at least what I understand the case to be, is that there is revenue that far exceeds what the current expenses are. And you all are in charge of allocating those revenues out to other parties and not related to aviation. But isn't the purpose of the airport and the purpose of the board ultimately to provide a safe environment for aviation? And introducing landing fees as well as all of these other actions you're taking is actually contrary to that in many respects. If you're a student trying to fly into a high altitude airport and you now have to pay landing fees, you're probably going to go somewhere else. And if that's the stated intent, so be it. But I'd rather have the board state that and be clear that they're trying to push aviation away from the airport, as opposed to take all of these actions that in effect and in their entirety are eliminating aviation from the Truckee airport. And thank you again.
Thank you. Eric, I see your hand up.
Yes, good evening. And thank you guys for all taking your time and your very, very precious time to work on these duties that we have here at the airport. One question that leads me is, why did you exempt a gross weight of 6,500 pounds? Shouldn't we spread the load to everybody to share in this burden if we're going to have this burden? And as Sven and Brian also did point out, is that when we do fly cross country, there is a landing fee, absolutely. There could be also a ramp fee. But when you purchase fuel, those tend to be waived. So the airport does make revenue on the other side. So it does help. But if an aviator is just going to come in and land and maybe have lunch at the red truck, they're not going to do that if those ramp fees or landing fees are so high that they can't participate and, just go out and have lunch, which I know that sounds kind of unique, but as Sven pointed out, mountain training is essential for an aviator, and we do have a wonderful airport and a great environment for that mountain training. So think about how, if you're going to charge this fee, everybody's got to pay their fair share, even the piston drivers. And then look at, if we were to purchase fuel, so that again, that's going to put revenue in the airport's hand, to maybe look at waiving some of those fees for that. I do understand costs are going up everywhere and we need to generate revenue, but is this maybe the correct spot to do it? And do we maybe start off a little bit lower? Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Eric. Does anybody else have public comments? Okay. Kevin, do you want to address any of those concerns?
Yeah, so the 6,500 pounds, that number varies by airport, and Eric's right. As I look around, and I get that the fact there are some that don't, but it's pretty. As I did a lot of research on this, it was pretty hard to find airports that didn't have one. I also, in talking to a lot of my fellow airport managers, I can't find any that waive a landing fee for fuel purchases. They will waive ramp fees, which we also do. We'll waive ramp fees for fuel purchases. There are some airports that'll waive landing fees for 1 year when they're talking with airlines, to incentivize new service and things like that. But it's pretty hard, or at least I've not seen it very common to waive a landing fee. The weight could be talked about at different levels. There are some airports that will charge a landing fee for any commercial operation. So even if you're flying in a Cirrus, a little 5-passenger, 4-passenger Cirrus, they may still charge a landing fee on those aircraft. But those aircraft, you're talking $20 or $30 is the landing fee, and I know every bit counts. But it is pretty typical to look at. I've seen 65, I saw 8,500 pounds, and I saw 12.5 were common weight metrics that airports start at, and partly because those heavier aircraft above that are where the wear and tear typically happens. It's very uncommon to charge a Cessna or a Piper, a small single-engine piston aircraft that's coming in, a landing fee, and we're not proposing that. So if someone's coming up here to do a mountain checkout, or someone's coming in here to do a flight training, they're not getting a landing fee charged unless they're in a larger, heavier aircraft. So I hope that I just tried to answer a few of those questions. But this is a discussion item. So I'm making notes, and these are things that we will go research a little bit more as we're hearing from some of our users on what they experience out there.
Yeah, this is Dan McGee. I seem to be unable to raise my hand, so I'm just going to punch in and let you know. Is it okay if I speak as well?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I don't have anything new to say other than sort of what Sven and Eric said. I'm concerned about just the constant increasing of fees. And I will ask Kevin to report on, if he knows, what percentage of towered airports in the U.S. do charge a landing fee. You kind of pitched it as it was a very common thing, and I do agree there's more than a handful of airports. It is typically, the Aspens, the San Franciscos, the Atlantas, of that ilk. But what percentage do charge landing fees?
Yeah, I mean,
it's definitely a one-way street, right? Once you start charging landing fees, they never go away, and they only go up.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer. I don't have a number on that. I just know when you start researching airports that have similar amounts of traffic as ours or less, there's a landing fee. The one that's close to us that has a landing fee, South Lake Tahoe. There's a landing fee down there. So it's pretty common, is what I'm saying. But you're right, there are airports that don't. I don't think Carson has one. But Reno has landing fees. I think Stead has landing fees. So, but it's a common fee that's used to offset these airside costs for things that the FAA can't or won't fund. So, we can get better numbers on that. I know Vector has better numbers on that.
Ask one other question on that, Kevin, please. Does government entities pay that landing fee as well, like Highway Patrol, Air National Guard, those guys that use the airport for coming and doing their high altitude training and having lunch? Do those guys pay that fee as well, or is it waived for government entities?
Would you like me to answer that?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
So that would have to be set by policy by the board when they would come forward with a full policy. I would argue some airports may not charge that, others do. I would imagine most of the time that is charged to those, at least in some of the initial research I've done. But I'd have to look into that a little bit more, and it would kind of be up to the district to decide if we're going to charge that.
All right, board members. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
All right, David.
I'm not sure that I agree with the 50-50 allocation for reasons that we discussed with the allocation study itself, but the bottom line is not very different. So I'm not really so concerned about that. I do, just for perspective, I think it is worth noting that so many of the actions this board is taking right now have a common thread, and that common thread is the allocation study that we did. We actually learned about what our financial situation is, and if you look at all of these different considerations, whether they're lease agreements or whether they're fees or what have you, these are related to that. So I think that it's worth noting that. Two things that I'm hearing, actually, and I think that these are valid concerns. One is that by charging a landing fee, we are going to push out the little folk to the to only making the airport suitable for a Global Express pilot. And then I'm also hearing that the fees should be spread across all aircraft classes, including pistons. And that seems a little contrary to me, because I would feel like that by having that cutoff of 6,500 pounds, by having no aircraft below that paying this fee, I'm not imagining that there are many aircraft over 6,500 that would be piloted by the quote-unquote little folk, because I think those are more expensive aircraft, certainly more expensive to operate aircraft than a 172 or 182 or a Cirrus or something like that. So I think there's a little bit of a contrast in philosophy there. I'm biased because I do have a 182 at the field. I do value the benefit of Truckee as a training environment. I do feel like probably the vast majority of pilots who are doing training in aircraft less than 6,500 pounds. So I'm not sure that this would affect the value of our airfield as a training operation. So I value that. I also don't want to do anything that turns Truckee into an airport where the entry level is a twin-engine jet. I certainly don't want to do that. As I said, I'm biased in that, but I don't think that does this, and I don't think that anything we've looked at does this. We are trying to make things fair and equitable. We have recognized that without that tax revenue, we could not operate this airport as we do right now. So part of that fairness and that equity is not just to the users of the airport, but it's to the people who are paying into that tax pool throughout the entire district, which goes all the way over the lake from State Line all the way down to Tahoma. It is property owners and the renters of those properties who are absorbing that cost. And we have to consider them when we're trying to be fair and equitable, that we don't use tax revenue to basically pay for private exclusive use of any kind of a service here. I think that we want to try to stay clear from that. I don't think that this is excessive. I think Kevin's done a good job doing his homework and the research into this, and I think that this is reasonable. And on let me just leave it at that. Thank you.
All right, Mary, how about you?
I'm in support again because I was on the cost allocation committee, and it does seem like the heavies have the most impact. And being the engineer, it's like the heavies have more of an impact on our pavement than do the small light aircraft, and it does seem appropriate to try to recover those costs.
Rick?
You're up. Yeah.
I agree that we do want to recover the costs. And from my perspective, I ran in 2016 saying this airport has so much money and is not doing enough for the community that we impact heavily. And I reran in 2020 for the same reason. And yes, we have a lot of money, and we couldn't do half the stuff we did if we didn't have that property tax. Look at the ADSB, look at the tower. look at all these things that we use on property tax to make this airport a really great, safe airport. I'm for doing, widening, extending 220. I didn't have votes in October when we did it. We're going to talk about it again on Kevin's thing. I'm for spending money on aviation, but I'm also not for giving stuff away to people because they've always had it and they want freebies. And it's somewhat offensive to me that people say, well, I want exactly what I had before. We had this problem in September with the air show, who asked for a 5-year same old deal, and it didn't get approved. And it did get approved in, February, after they finally decided to cut the cost and make some changes, etc. So I'm not sympathetic with people saying we're trying to price that out of business. I looked at the cost fee at Aspen. Maybe that should be higher, but I think we're an Aspen of Lake Tahoe. Maybe we should be that level. And the heavier jets make a major impact on our pavement, and we need to address that. So I'm in favor of doing this.
Can I add one more perspective? I appreciate those comments. I was over the weekend, I was at a conference with a bunch of airport managers in Scottsdale, and we actually were talking about some of these things. But one thing to consider with these landing fees are designed to recover costs from transient operators. That's typically how they work, not your local pilots. And so when you have a deficit, and airports use different ways to calculate what that number is, the number they need to recover to maintain facilities. If we don't recover that from transients and some of these that have these heavier aircraft, then it's got to come from somewhere. And so then it ends up coming out of hangar rents and other fees that we have to charge. Another way to look at this is a way to charge a fee for usage to out of area users that help us essentially keep our costs in check and not have to defer costs onto locals and other users that aren't having the impact. But there's a $1.2 to $1.9 million deficit, depending on which version of the allocation study you look at, and that this is attempting to try and recover from those that are coming into our community and having that impact. Now, we want to be fair to them, and I think we've worked very hard to make sure that the fees we're charging are industry commensurate. They're what is being charged at lots of other airports. And there is a lot of data in that FBO fee study for anyone that wants to go look at it, where we have looked at airports from all over the country and had a third-party consultant do that. And we're right in line with what others are charging. So I just would throw that out there as another thing to consider.
All right, thank you, Kevin. What do you need from us?
So next steps, if the board is comfortable with this allocation approach, because I had those two different methodologies, and using this allocation approach, what we would end up doing is creating a policy instruction that would create a landing fee, and it would come in with a lot of the parameters and the background that we've already kind of prepared here. We would also want a little bit of time to do some outreach, to our user community that this is coming. Make sure we answer questions from local users that are local based aircraft tenants that are wondering if this applies to them. But it's not something I would want to turn on tomorrow. But I think within the next month or two, we'll be able to come back and with the policy instruction that would implement. And then you can also have the discussion on how you want to collect that, whether we collect it by hand, manually, or you collect it with the automated system that's already installed on our airport. So we would come back if we're heading in the right direction.
I'd like to add that hand counting doesn't sound very good to me.
No,
I would go with a vector. It sounds much more automated, expensive. Maybe you ought to factor that into the landing fee thing, the cost of that collecting that.
Yeah,
I would not want our employees to do this by hand.
That's my feeling. I would recommend that. I know that there is a cost to doing that, but I will tell you, Hardy and I talked to a few airports that are using it, And once they instituted the automated system, the revenues went up because aircraft just get missed. It's just by nature. So there may be this idea of, do we want to collect some of that fee by adding it to the fee we already collect, or just absorb it in like credit card fees, some of those things. But Kelly's camera came on. I'm wondering if she has a comment.
I was just going to say, because before the four of us make any recommendations, Kat, you didn't actually speak. Did you have any comments on this? I'd like to hear your perspective on this too.
I mean, just looking at it as a non-pilot and looking at some of the comparisons, it seems high to me. I guess I'm curious how we arrived at $7.14 when South Lake is 4 and Sun Valley is 4.5. I mean, where do we come up with that number? I feel like that's high.
Average.
Yeah, so our number came out of the allocation study. There's a table there on page 54, I believe. But to answer so we have allocated cost that is actually probably at a higher level than other airports might have. But each of those airports will have gone through some kind of a cost analysis to come up with their number, because people can challenge that. They can say, I want to see where that, are you trying to make a profit off of facilities that the FAA has helped fund? Ours is quite robust in the allocation study as to how we came to our number. And so those other airports, and I can check with them. We know the manager at Sun Valley. That's one of the ones we talked to, and find out what methodology they used. You can see the other methodology that's in the staff report would collect about $600,000, and that methodology is just trying to collect our 10% of the FAA grants over that course of the time. That's the one that Brandley did. You could play around with that one also to collect more than 10%, but
right.
It just depends on the methodology you want to use, but it has to be based on science.
Yeah, I'm trying to be mindful of, I can't remember if it was Brian or Dan or one of the guys who spoke earlier about landing fees. Once they're in, you don't get rid of them, and then they only go up. So I just feel like that's a number that's going to have a lot of pushback, and maybe it makes more sense to phase it in.
The only other thing I wanted to address was somebody saying how, since we increase rates on jet fuel, how we're selling less jet fuel. And in fact, we are not. We had 41,271 gallons in January, 42,201 in February, and 41,332. So this idea that we may be losing money by it's the facts don't support that. So this idea that I think that it's worth giving it a try. I'd like to start it up and see.
I'd say on the fuel thing, one thing to be aware of.
Are we still doing public comment, or have we closed that, or what's up?
No,
Kat?
we're not doing public. No, we're done.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you, though.
And then the other thing is, in terms of if the landing fee, that's the landing fee for any Global Express, they would pay that no matter, is just a clarification, Kevin, right?
They're typically not waived. Landing fees are not waived in my experience. There'll be exceptions to that, but it's usually based on some incentive that an airport is doing to try and incentivize some kind of new service or use.
And then I was just
fees are waived commonly.
Okay, so at these aircraft that you put in the report, it's like what weight they are. In terms of, I'm trying to get my head around what our current rates, fees, and charges are. Certain times the toughs are waived if they buy a certain amount. How does this all fit together? Are we actually increasing, or it looks like we're almost just the same?
Yeah, so we just did a 6% increase on all those TU fees in January. So we're not proposing any change because the fee study, the FBO fee study that we did shows that our fees are pretty commensurate. They're market. But then we don't have the landing fee, and so these airports that we surveyed have landing fees, but we're not charging that portion, and so that's where this would come in. So we would waive those TU fees based on, the TU or ramp fees. We would waive those based on a fuel purchase, but you would still pay and if you use Vector, which I would recommend, that's going to be automated. They're going to, when they leave, they get a bill. And a lot of the companies, and Vector's already actually looked at this, and most of our large operators already have accounts with Vector. So they get their monthly bill, and so these are the airports that you go to. And not all, but many of those fees are passed on to the people in the back of the plane, particularly for the 135s, the charters or the net jets.
Right.
Those are being paid by the people that are being picked up and dropped off. Not always. There's some that aren't, but that's pretty common.
Because we have toughs right now that are similar, very similar, and then we have toughs that are peak period that are even higher, like for the Global Express.
Yeah.
And so that's my only question.
Those don't change.
Okay.
Those wouldn't
Got
change.
it. Thank you. That's good clarity. Thank you.
And Kevin,
And this is all towards transient.
This is just transient. Yeah, we're not talking about anything, and transient over 6,500 pounds. So
Right.
all the small folks, if you're coming up here for your $200 hamburger from Sacramento, you don't pay this.
Right.
If you come up here in a TBM or a PC-12, yeah, there's going to be but it's $45. It's not a huge amount.
Got it. Thank you.
and just to clarify on that, Kevin, so is the presumption that we would use hangar tenancy as a determiner as to whether or not that aircraft is, like, if the tail number is assigned to one of our hangars, the fee is waived?
Or we don't charge the fee for those folks that have a lease agreement with the airport. So for instance, our based commercial operators, CareFlight, Mountain Lion, those would not be charged. That would be our proposal, as well as anyone that has an aircraft in a hangar. So if they have an N number that is tied to one of our leases, those would be built into the system. Vector would already have those. So when that airplane taxied by the camera, they would not be charged.
Thank you.
And the thought process is many of those folks, if not all, are paying property tax to fund the airport. So, there's some recognition that some are already paying more than others just by the nature of their residency here in the district. So we'll keep working on this and bring back a proposal. And Kat, I heard your comments, and some of the other things that were said out there. We'll see if we can dig up some more data too on a few things. But
and do you anticipate we'll see something like this in May?
I'll talk with Rob and Hardy on that.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Board committee assignments and ad hoc. Just ad hoc report.
Yes, I was just making a note here. Okay. Anything, Rick, on the Mountain Housing Council?
No.
Then the Workforce Housing JPA. You're going to get probably in June, you're going to get a proposal for a down payment assistance program. And you'll get all the details and see all the nuances and details of that as it's developed. Our board the JPA board will be looking at that next month. And it's an opt-in. So, districts can opt into that or opt out as you work through that. And so that's one of the next big things that we've been working on through that, as well as the strategic plan. The strategic plan that's been put together is quite impressive. I think they've done a really good job with that. Our board will look at it. The JPA board will look at it here in May, and then here in June or July, you'll be able to see it, which has a lot of ambitious goals. So we're going hard, on housing, and as we all know, housing is a really tough nut to crack. But when you get the strategic plan, I think you'll like what you see there. The next one is the Master Plan Ad Hoc Committee. Director Diamond Stevens, any thoughts on that? I just plugged the May 3rd open house again, and make sure people come to that. We'd love to hear from as many people as possible on that.
And I'll just add to that that Rick and I will also be doing a coffee talk together on May 31st, 8:30 a.m. at the Tahoe House in Tahoe City. So for our constituents over there by the lake, Tahoe House Bakery and Gourmet in Tahoe City, May 31st, 8:30 to discuss this.
All right. Anything else on that committee report?
Is this a time where we can ask questions of the committee, since we can't talk to them other times? Just in terms of being tuned in to the efforts on last week, my thought was some clarity in terms of jets versus piston aircraft and usage. We had the Jet 2.3 and the 4.5, and kind of talking, because jets are there's some pistons that also are flying IFR, but we're not really distinguishing IFR and VFR in the talk to the community at large. And if somehow that can be incorporated in, one thought. Another thing is, when we have these noise signatures that are being shown, there's one that shows existing current anticipated with the flight procedures, but we don't have that in terms of the possible new runway or the effects of that. And I don't know if that's anything we can get together in time, but it's, people say, well, you're going to do XYZ, but you have to look at XYZ in the context of ABC, what's currently here. And I'm not feeling like there's that clarity. So that would just be a comment back to you to somehow in the addressing that Aviatrix has been hired in this outreach to help us develop these simplified ways of talking to the community. And my other third point would be in terms of talking about community outreach. We had maybe 4 or 5 community members, a lot of pilots, and I have been asking if, we have the list of commenters for years, and DVQ did a big outreach to them last year to see if things had changed or were better, and that came back not really, and people had stopped calling, given up. But pushing out information specific to them rather than just via the e-blast, that these options are, the flight procedures and the alternative flight procedures and the possible runway, that we're looking at it and that they might have input. And so those would be my 3 comments. That somehow incorporating that into your presentation. I plan to be there, next Tuesday. I'm assuming we all will be there, but at different places, so we won't be talking amongst ourselves. But these are things that I'm aware of, and I can bring my big blue book and the history and the spaghetti maps. But not all of you have this history, and it's not something that's condensed or easy to understand for other people.
I just to address that as one of the ad hocers on this.
Is that a new noun?
I agree. The VFR versus IFR, we actually did discuss that. I think that is a huge issue because we really are talking about a very, very significant percentage of our traffic that will not be influenced by these flight procedures.
Correct.
But it's worth, and of course, I think it's one of these things like when we do the outreach and when pilots show up, we take that for granted. We understand that, right? But it's reasonable to convey that more clearly. The other aspect of it, which we also discussed, was that I thought that Brad from Meet and Hunt did a great job on that virtual on the presentation. We showed the what and we showed a little bit of the how, but we did not show the why. We did not explain why we were looking at this at all, because of if we look at the traffic increases threefold since 2005, and we have our aviation forecast from last year that suggests that number will likely climb. I don't think we're doing a good job of putting into context why we're even having this conversation. And out of that context, it might seem like, why are you even thinking about all these things? So I agree with that premise that we could do better there. I also feel that we would benefit from additional meetings down the road. And I did talk to Kevin about this. Of course, Kevin won't be here by that point in time, but just about we did a lot of outreach on this, but we might have done some messaging that was not inspirational. Master plan update, maybe it's like when the town of Truckee did their general plan update and they were confused by why no one cared, because no one knew what that meant. And I think that maybe the same thing with the master plan update. If we focus, like for example, like options for reducing aircraft impact over the next 2 decades, that might be something that appeals to less technical community members about like, I'd like to find out what they have and what the options are here, because that's something that's more specific to that. And I do want what you just said made me think about after Kevin helped me with this. After the Challenger accident, we got a petition by how many? We had 100 and how many?
I think there were 134, and I apologize if anyone was on that letter, but I think it was 134, and just that one letter. There were others.
Okay, do we have any way of like contacting that group and that group know
we can cross-check that with our list. I mean, not all those people gave us, contact info. But we have a lot of those names are in the email list that we're sending out. We also went through all of our noise commenters to make sure they are in the list that's going out to the public on these meetings. And many of those folks have been in, and it's not just been these meetings. We've had 3 ACT meetings on this that have been pretty well attended, going back to January. Talking about
and the fellow who organized I thought it was 141 on that letter because I knew a lot of people. Colin Butcher, he has a website. Change the Truckee Airport.com. And I kept sending him the notice of these ACT meetings. He did show up to one of them.
Yeah.
But there are the one of the leaders of that group, well, David.
So, anyway, that's the point, is making more effort to reach out to the communities at large that are affected, the Glenshire neighborhoods, the Martis Valley, Ponderosa neighborhood, the Olympic Heights neighborhood. So that was my other thought. The other point that comes up quite a lot that I have heard is that, it's going to cost $40 million. And the reality is, if it happens, and we're just still at the front end of even seeing if it's feasible, but if it were to happen, and there's 2 options, the FAA might pay for it. And if they won't, if we have to pay for it, it's not going to increase taxes because we would bond it. And this needs to be explained to people. When this came up before, we only got $4 million in property taxes. This year we get $7 million. It's just as housing prices are going up, and we could set aside money every year to pay off the bond, just like we're doing on the 10 executive hangars. There's $240,000. every year for bond payment on those 10 hangars. Just like Reedy Creek in Florida is holding $1 billion worth of bonds for Disney. You know, I mean, this is how you would do it. It's not going to increase taxes, and that needs to be straight up explained.
Yeah. I feel like after we get past May 3rd, maybe we get a little bit more surgical about not just doing an outreach, but about the subtopic of the outreach. And
right.
What you're saying, Mary, is relevant. The cost is maybe a whole discussion. And then
right.
Yeah, I know from my perspective, until the board provides a lot of input and direction on talking to the community about borrowing money, that's not something I would feel ready to discuss. But I think as you got into those other outreach meetings beyond, because let's remember the focus of this outreach is get this submitted so we can see if it's even an option. So, to the FAA, and so we have these 2 meetings, which we're trying to do. And I would argue we've done a lot of outreach, and I think maybe the messaging, we could work on, how we're messaging some of those things. But as far as the who we're sending this to, everybody's getting the same, noticing. But yeah, we can work on that part. But finding out whether or not it's an option was the goal of this.
That's where we are.
Getting it submitted, because there's going to be phase 2 of the master plan. I want to tell everybody that once we know is this 3rd runway even an option, that's going to inform phase 2, which we're going to get into all these facility development alternatives that will involve 220 and 1129, and maybe this runway if we get information back that says it is feasible. So there'll be a lot more to talk about.
Right.
Can I say one thing? Just so we're agendizing again the May 3rd meeting, so there shouldn't be any concern regarding interactions.
Okay.
If the whole board shows up.
Thank you.
What we'll have to do at the beginning is just if we can convene, and we'll have to, at 5:30, if there's a quorum. As soon as there's a quorum there, we'll have a little agenda. You'll have to just open the meeting, and then at the end of the meeting, we'll have to convene and close. Just keep that in mind.
You don't have to worry about me. I won't be there.
Yeah. That's all right.
So.
All right. Hangar use policy.
Yeah, that's Rick and David again.
Rick, do you want to talk about that one this time?
Well, we actually had our first face-to-face meeting with Jill McClendon and Dave Hoffman and Hardy and Dave Diamond and me, and we gave some direction to staff about the way we wanted to go. We didn't always agree with each other, but we did give direction about the kinds of things that we wanted to address. And I think that's a summary, unless you want to go more detail, David.
No, that's good for me. Thanks.
More to come. Stay tuned. There's a lot of stay tuned here.
Yeah, a lot of work going on.
Yep.
So on the next one, the interim general manager recruitment ad hoc, I put that on there because that was an official ad hoc. Is that committee finished, or is there any other work that group will do, or anything you want to report, I guess?
Well, we're done. We got us an interim general manager, and then we as the board need to decide where we're going from here, which I assume we could do at the workshop in early May, deciding where we go from here.
We should certainly discuss that, Mary. I agree with you. At the workshop.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Mary, thanks. And Teresa's not here, but thank you both. That was a huge stress item.
It moved fast, and I'm glad Rob was able to step in. We had 4 candidates, and it was good. So, thank you to everyone who was able to juggle your schedule so we could make those interviews.
Mm-hmm.
I think you set a record for board meetings that month. Sorry about that. I know I'm the cause of all this. So,
yes, you were.
Okay, the climate transformation.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks to Josh too, by the way,
Yeah,
because
I
he
know Josh
was.
is the one working.
Sorry about that.
He's terrific.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, the CTA, the Climate Transformation Alliance, a lot of good activity going on there. The charters and all that stuff is done. We're actually out in the recruiting process, and Kat and I were assigned to talk with to Rayleigh's, which I've not talked to Rayleigh's yet. We're still working on. I've got a contact now for them, but Mountain Hardware and Nevada County. I had a contact at Nevada County I was able to talk to have them sign on to this charter, which is essentially what you've already, the founding members have already signed on to. And both Mountain Hardware and Nevada County have agreed that they want to join in on this. And so the other members are all doing the same contact. So the coalition is building, and then there's some the strategic plan that has been put together. We'll start going through that implementation. So that's kind of the latest on that. Kat, anything you want to add to the CTA?
No, it's just chugging right along.
Building momentum.
Yep.
Okay. So our ACT meetings, we have Director Rolfe and Hetherington scheduled to attend May 11th. And that one's going to be on our summer. We did this last May or June. It was one of those, but just talking about and letting people know about what we're expecting this summer, and also reminding folks about how they can contact the airport and talk about their experience with aircraft noise and annoyance, outreach, other things that are going on. We'll be able to plug some of our master plan work there. So that's what's on May 11th. And then on the June 8th meeting is going to be a super exciting one. So this is a very bland, unexciting invitation to a meeting, as we talked about with the other one. I'm working on that and how to get people interested in an airport land use compatibility plan. But it is an interesting document that the new master plan will, once adopted, will inform this and change some things. So we'll be working on that June 8th, unless the new general manager decides to change that topic, which he very well could do. But that's kind of what we've got planned for the next two meetings. So we don't have anybody scheduled for the June 8th meeting, if anyone wants to sign up for that.
I'll be in Bulgaria, so I don't think I will do that.
You don't have to decide today, but yeah, we have availability for two.
Okay. Let's look at that next month and see if the subject has changed.
We'll keep it up there.
Can I just put as a placeholder, because I know that I'm going to forget this? I feel like we skipped over tab 2 in this meeting. Am I wrong?
Where's my agenda?
The ACT update.
No, that wasn't the ACT update. That was extending resolution 2021-11.
Yeah, we did skip it.
Okay, just maybe put that.
That was part of the consent.
Part of the consent agenda.
Yeah.
Oh, never mind that.
Yeah, we were within 30 days, Director Diamond, so we weren't required to have it as a separate item.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, anything else? I think we're done with that one. Yes, I am.
Okay, is there any public comment on any of the those reports? Okay, general manager's report.
Perfect. Yes.
I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Robert.
Robert, I just wanted to mention, you guys talked a little bit about attendance at the ACT meetings and a distinction between pilots and homeowners. And I want you guys to think about pilots and homeowners, because we're both, some of us. Actually, the majority of the pilots on that call were also homeowners. And we pay property taxes. We are affected by choices that the board makes outside of our flying as well. So that's something that we just need to keep in mind, so we don't create a divisiveness that is not helpful.
Thank you, Robert. That's a good reminder. Eric.
Yeah, I just wanted to put something out there, food for thought, that you guys can make a huge difference in the community today, right now, is that what does the board look at purchasing one home minimum every year to solve a housing crisis. Pick it where. It doesn't have to be great, doesn't have to be enough, but you could do something now and make a difference in someone's life by purchasing a home. If you mandated to purchase 5 homes, I don't know how many homes you could purchase with $40 million to solve a housing crisis. But think about the impact that you could have immediately within the Truckee community at large by helping that out. I just want to throw that out. That's something that I think the board could make a difference immediately on, instead of waiting for something to be built, something to be rented. You own the golf course. Think about it. I just want to put that food for thought that could happen fairly rapidly, and you guys could make a great difference in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Okay. General Manager's report. Kevin.
All right, perfect. Just a couple items I wanted to bring up with some discussion is your board workshop scheduling and planning. So the 25th of May, we'll have that, and Lisa and I will work on a location off-site. I was thinking actually of the North Lake Tahoe Event Center. That's in Kings Beach, but I don't know if that or looking in Tahoe City maybe even better. Is that kind of what we're thinking? I imagine the maybe able to use the PUD, their boardroom. They're very generous with that with us, but we'll do something like that.
The event center is closer to Teresa's home than Tahoe City.
Okay, well maybe the event center is an awesome place, and we can get it's good food and other things. So the North Lake Tahoe Event Center might be a good place.
Can I just for the record, I love to shorten the drive for Teresa, but I'm also excited because we have a massive constituent base over there.
Yeah,
so it's not a bad idea to go over there and be with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're taking, that's a blast from the past. We used to move every third board meeting, we moved it around the district. That's going back. Mary remembers those days back in about 2012.
Yep.
But something to think about periodically. I know Nevada County, Placer County, they hold those meetings. We could do one meeting a year in those locations. So a good thought. So you're going to get a call from, you may already have had an email or a phone call from Agnew Beck, from Shauna and Ellen, and Kat and I did work out a scope with them. So they're all good to go, and they're going to want to meet with, they're going to meet with 10 people. They're going to meet with all 5 board members, all senior staff, and Lauren. They wanted to meet with HR and district clerk because she works closely with staff and with the board. So you'll have interviews with them, and you can talk about what you want to cover in these meetings. It's likely it's going to be more than one meeting, but this first one will be on the 25th, and she'll gather from all of you what it is you want to talk about, build those common themes, and then they'll do the heavy lifting to get ready for that meeting. I've been through this with them with the housing JPA, and they're very good at this. And so I think you'll find the meeting very, very productive, and the documenting coming out of it, I think will be really, really good. Any thoughts or comments on that meeting? But anything Kat and I can carry on to Shauna? Perfect. All right, so that's coming up. Okay, kind of a big one. I wanted to put this on there, the 220 engineering design grant. So we did put it came up early. I can't remember, one of our local residents / pilots talked about this earlier in the meeting about what's the status of the design grant for 220. So that was put on a temporary hold. We never turned down money. We never said we weren't going to do it, but we just put a partial hold on that grant because the funding actually doesn't come till 2023 to actually do the project. But we put just a temporary hold on the design while we looked at this initial review of the third runway to see if there was any effect. As we know, looking at a lot of data, a lot of work that's been done now, is there's very little, if any, effect on 220, even if we wanted to build the 11 or the 1634 runway. So I wanted to put it out there that if we need to get the design and engineering started here within the next few months, you have another month to think about this, but you should make a decision on this by no later than May, if we want to do the design work so they could bid it in the fall and have it constructed in, at least do construction in 2023. Now, there are a few complications on this because, what if you want to widen it and expand I can tell you a little bit about that. So at least some ideas that you could look at least on the bidding and design phase. By doing the design work, you're not obligated to actually accept the grant. But when the FAA schedules these things in, if you don't take the money at a certain year, it doesn't mean you won't get it, but it may mean that it gets rescheduled, and so the money may not come till 2026 or 2027. So Kevin, I just wanted to get that out there and let you talk about it.
Kevin, I'd like you, or Kat, I'd like you to put this on the agenda for May to discuss the design work, especially with, I'd like to have all 5 board members there, because I thought we had postponed this to 2024, but Kevin, they've come back and they want you to do something in 2023.
Yeah.
So it brings it back again, and I'd like to talk about it one more time.
Yeah.
And be warned, I will talk about lengthening, extending it during that discussion.
Yeah.
I just don't want to lose. I don't lose money, and that runway is a little bumpy.
Yeah. I do want to clarify that I did get an email, and they did ask us to extend it to 2024, and I reported back, hey, we got 2024, and then about 5 weeks ago, they were saying, no, we want to do it in 2023, and I said, you guys told us 2024, and they said, this is where the money is. If we don't do it in 2023, we may have to move it, but they ebb and flow and change periodically, these guys, so yeah.
Let's talk about it next month.
All right. Sounds like a plan.
May meeting. All right. Yeah, I mean, we could talk about the air curtain burner if you want. I wasn't going to bring up anything else unless you wanted to talk about it, but that's my GM report.
All right. Does anybody have any more questions? Oh, go ahead, Mary.
Just on the air curtain, it's preliminary at this point. My concerns would be if there's smoke when it's starting up and shutting down, and they'll have to get a permit from the Northern Sierra Air Quality Management District. But smoke at the end of the runway concerns me. But if it's how long of a time frame it is, those are all things we're going to need to know. And the storage.
Mary, is your concern about air pollution or visual pollution for people using 2.9?
Visual pollution for potential. What effect it would have. If it's 5 minutes and the tower can hold traffic, that's one thing. If it's a half hour, that's another thing. And we need to have that information, which is part of what they'll have to do with their analysis of opacity and PM10 when in their submission to the Air Quality Management District. But we need to know that because that is of a concern to me. Yeah. That is a safety issue. And then the other thing is the storage of how much brush is going to be coming into that area. And if this thing were to not be everything it's promised for, what are we going to do? Are we now responsible to dispose of that brush? Does it fall on us? The limbs and trees and whatever it is going to be that are going to burn, but then, it didn't work. I don't want us to be responsible to have to clean up any mess.
Yeah, these were all the questions I had in our couple meetings that we've had. So the first question I had was smoke. Yeah. Obviously, as an airport manager, smoke at the end of the runway.
Right.
It generates a little bit of smoke right when it starts, but it's not. It wouldn't be anything that wouldn't, because I've seen videos of these machines working, and how these air curtain burners work is that recycles the smoke and burns the smoke, and that's why it doesn't emit any, because the machine's constantly cycling the smoke into the burner, and so it emits. We've actually already talked to. I was more concerned about TSD because we've smoked them out once before doing our burn piles. We actually burn down there ourselves. And so even at certain times of the year, we can have burn piles without an air curtain burner and still have no danger, no smoke effect on operation. So not really worried about the smoke, but they also talked about the permit, and they're working on that. And then they would also be responsible, when I say they, I'm talking about the town and the fire district, on all the material. It's all them doing it. We're just giving a site. And we may bring a little material over there, but they're the ones that have the most, but they would be responsible for all of that. And that would all be in an agreement. We would sign agreement that they're responsible to remove it if they don't. And I even included a picture of what one of these things looked like on a truck. So if this doesn't work, they come in, they hitch it up, and they move it. It's not something that has to sit there all summer. So that's kind of what we're thinking. But those are all great questions.
And yeah, just, I work in power plants in my other life and deal with a lot of people who do. And the idea that it's going to burn its smoke and not emit is a nice idea.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll work. I mean,
and that it's going to be, and is it cycling on and off? So there's a start period every day. There's a downtime every day. We need clarity on it because, yeah.
Yeah. All right. That was all I had for the GM report.
Great. Okay. Is there any public comment on the GM report?
Let's see. The other one is the safety report. Let's see, the goals. I like the goals. Then the safety report was kind of, some of those trespassing events were disheartening and disconcerting. So I'm glad that our staff is out there watching, and I'm glad to see that Ryan and Derek did such a great job with Mike on the ARF truck to get that shutdown taken care of.
Yeah, they did a good job there.
I wanted to do kudos on that, and just these trespassing events are something we got to watch.
Yeah, Stacy's working hard on that. Some of the fencing money that was approved, she's working where we strategically try and put some of these places where, most of the folks that wander onto the airport do it unknowingly. But some of them are not. They're a little bit disingenuous, when you're asking them what they're doing. But many of them are like, oh my gosh, and then they don't know where to go. But we're constantly vigilant with that and working on that.
That's almost if we need more fencing. I want to think about that because
and we don't want.
That's also a safety issue. Yeah,
but it's just wire fencing, not barbed wire.
Right.
Signs so that we can, move people away from certain areas that are inviting. That they could see a sign that says no trespassing in airport and all that.
Thank you.
Right. Operations and maintenance report. Dave?
Well, I tell you what, if there's anything in there that you folks have of interest, I could bring you up to speed, but we're working diligently to get some bids out, to get some things on the books for the facilities maintenance plan, things of that nature. And then fuel sales, as Mary had noted earlier, we're keeping right in tune with the previous 2 months. GPUs continue to be strong need out there on the ramp. And, we're joining the rest of, or many of the other districts and small businesses, which is we are challenged with getting interviews or applications to even look at for our summer position. We've got 2 summer positions that are open, and we have not had any applications or applicants that have panned out. The one we interviewed found employment elsewhere, and that's, we're no stranger to what others are feeling also.
All right. Anybody have questions for Dave?
I did have a question. Oh, go on, David.
Yeah, I was just going to say the 5 hangar. We've got 5 hangar attendants, which seems like that's kind of an anomaly for us in a certain month, isn't it? Was that?
It is, David, and Jill is best to speak to the trends. But yes, we as the O&M department have a number of turnovers here. Some of them are what we would consider end pockets that are changing hands. But we do have some other longtime tenants that have made their way out of here, moving out of state. Is one way that we turn them. We've also, I'm not sure in this group, but we've also had some age outs where folks have, hung it up before, while they're on top. So that's it. And we're trying to turn them over. We've got a couple that are, Jill tells me we've got waiting in the wings with their paperwork, with aircraft, and ready to take over May 1st.
Thank you.
I had a question about the Hangar 1 undergoing electrical engineering work to bring the facility up to code.
Yes.
And you have written that the budget is $50,000 and it was included in the 2022 budget. And I looked at the 2022 budget and the FMP Hangar 1 electrical upgrade was $25,000, not $50,000. And so I was curious, what is this electrical upgrade? In the budget, we approved $25,000 and now it looks like it's double that amount. And wondering what happened.
Okay, Mary, that would have been my error if and when I've got the facilities maintenance plan here. But what I wanted to let you folks know is that we had that number budgeted. We, Mitch Montgomery and myself, are not anticipating that full amount to be needed. What we are working with is upgrades, having that facility being a 1963 vintage, give or take, that there has been a decent amount of wall plugs and wiring that have not seen upgrade over time and into those aged electrical panels. So those are the types of things that we are focused on, is bringing some things up to date, which is GFI outlets and some things of that nature. We're really have polished that building quite nicely. Again, not part of this discussion, but the bifold door is the last item to put that building into A1 shape, and this electrical is just a continuation of what that facility needs.
What does the lease say, David? I know when I got into this about some of the structural problems in January of 2017, when Sierra had plywood with 2x4s holding the snow from coming in the windows. I read the lease and we were responsible for structural issues. Do you think the electrical is a structural issue?
I think that could be open for discussion, Rick. We, through my timeline here working for the previous director of operations and maintenance, we did consider that to be our responsibility. Not that we would add electrical for specialty situations such as compressors or making creature comforts, if you may, in certain rooms. But we did want to always have a safe and functional electrical system within that building for those folks to use, as was designed, more or less.
Has Sierra Arrow requested this?
Negative. This was identified in the facilities maintenance plan, and that is what we're trying to use as our guiding template for what facilities need. We're not afraid to push something back if it does not have a health or safety aspect to it. Electricity is electricity. You can't see it and it can kill you. And I think some GFIs and some upgrading to these wall outlets would be a proper touch.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, I don't. Right now in that building is what would be considered legal non-compliant electrical. I mean, lots of buildings have, outdate the building code, and so that building's that way. So they would have no reason to go replace it, because what is there is compliant with what was done when the building was built or any of those upgrades were done. But yeah, in the FMP, it called out for us to do some bring things up to the current code, and so that's all we're doing there. And it may be a little bit more than what the FMP, but we always use that FMP as a guide, and we can come back every time. We got a lot of different things in here that it shows, but I'll give you an example. We just saved about $70,000 on striping. Got a striping contract that would do it a lot cheaper than what we had proposed. And so these things ebb and flow a little bit, and we may not go up to 50, but that would be, I would consider that's a district cost to upgrade, not necessarily upgrade, but bring into compliance some of that electrical.
Yeah. And Mary, to speak to, I'm looking at the 2020 FMP, and I might be in the wrong one, but we're showing for the electrical, they're calling for new lighting, new receptacles in the work areas, and we've got plans, again, not that we have to do it, but for new door controls, which would be electrical for the new bifold door if and when that gets here. And we do have that called out for in the FMP for $50,000.
I've got the budget and it's saying it's 25, so that's
okay.
Just a QA thing. I mean,
sure.
Yeah.
Well, you keep saying bifold door. Are you talking the big hangar door?
Yes, sir, Rick. I will be asking the district again when we go to our budget workshop. That is the last thing in that building that has not been addressed. It is also the item that is the largest, heaviest, and is cable functioned. And I have professional concern that building at that age, that we should be focusing on that large item that goes up and down with greater frequency probably than any hangar on the airfield.
Yes, David. When I did my hangar tour, we specifically stared at the cables.
I agree, and like I say, I've had it on the budget wish list for a number of years. This will probably be the 4th or 5th, and I'm really hoping to catch your interest with it this year.
All right. Are there any more questions for Dave?
So is it 50,000 or is it 25,000?
What I'm going to say is these numbers in the FMP are targets, and so we try and work within those numbers. But when we get bids, they don't always match these numbers. But what we're saying is we are not going to go over what the FMP budget is in 2022. This is how we've done it every year. But certain items are going to come in a little bit over. Other items will come in under. There may be something we defer. But every month we're going to update you on what we're doing.
If we replace this door, it's going to be more than $50,000.
Well, he's talking about doing that in 2023. So he's talking about bringing that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but you're saying in our budget workshop in August, Dave is going to bring forward a proposal to replace the door for this next fiscal year. There is a little bit of electrical work to at least prep for that, should we decide to do that in 2023. Is that right, Dave?
That is accurate. And I'm hoping, for everybody's sake, that we don't come anywhere near the $50,000 or said 25 for this year's work. And we'll work within. We're making this safe and functional. It doesn't have to be luxurious in any way, shape, or form.
David, can you get better pricing for the August budget workshop if you're going to propose replacing that door?
Yes, sir. I will get the latest and greatest.
Because your last pricing is way old.
Yes, sir, it is. And I will make sure that I have that in hand when it comes time to speak to that.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Kelly, you're up next.
Hi, good evening. I trust you've all had a chance to read through the financials. Just a quick recap of the quarter to date numbers. Our revenues are $3.8 million. Currently, we are $180,000 over budget. and 481,000 ahead of 2021. Net income 675,000. We're 952,000 ahead of budget and 800,000 ahead of 2021. So even though our gallons sold for jet fuel are down 22%, the increase in the into-wing and the pricing seems to be helping our case. And just wondering if anyone had any questions on the quarterly numbers?
Have you given CalPERS the $500,000?
We have scheduled to do that every year in the fourth quarter.
No, we approved it last June.
Right. For 2022, it goes in the fall. We already did it for 2021.
That's the question. Did you do it in 2021? Because you were trying to calculate it and get the right number?
Done and done in November.
Okay. Well, I'd like to do it again, but that will be in the budget discussion.
Well, it was approved for 2022 already.
Yeah, there'll be another one in the fourth quarter this year, and then we'll talk about 2023.
All right. Okay.
Is there any it's in the fourth quarter, but it seems like money and can it be paid early? Why wait till the fourth quarter?
Ends in June, so it helps for us to get a better valuation number and information on how their year went after they do that.
Oh, I see. That's right.
We have to work with their fiscal year.
That was the same story last year. That's why you did it at the end of the year.
Okay.
And I forgot it.
Okay. I had a question in terms of the 100 low lud. You show that the gallons sold thus far is 20,000 gallons, 536. And yet in Dave's report, when I add up the 3, 64.29, 45.23, and 44.58, it only adds up to 15,410. And I'm just curious how you came up with the 20,536.
Let me grab that. It should be, let's see. One second. I can come back to that if you have any other questions. I just need to pull up a different report.
Okay. The other question I had was I recall last month I wanted to see the breakout. We do jet, and I think I'd asked if we could do the discounted Jet A. And I was trying to remember, is that something you can't do? Or is that something you can do?
The program didn't start until April, and these numbers are only through March.
Oh, okay. Got it. So.
Yes, we could show that, right, Kelly?
Sure.
But yeah, we just hadn't started yet.
Okay. And again, it's, just a QA thing, I guess, if, the numbers don't match.
Yeah,
but
we'll look at that. I know that you might be writing your reports at different times. And so some of those numbers, it's just, we may want to just consider having those fuel gallon numbers just in one location in the board.
Well, yeah, her numbers are, as of April 27th, but it's quarter one, which is January, February, March.
Yeah.
And I have Dave's report for January, February, March.
Yeah.
Our numbers are coming straight from the report that comes out of the AvFuel Hub, which is the system of record of everything that we sold. And I've got 20,536.46.
Well, then something is screwy between.
Dave, where are you getting? That's why I'm saying we should just have one place where we're reporting those gallons. The AvFuel Hub is where those are coming from. So.
Yes,
Dave, you're getting it from the same place.
I've been working on breaking them down. I've been changing my report since I've been starting to do this, and I would say that the error is probably on my side. The way we've added the self-serve and some other things. So I will work with Kelly to make sure that we don't have conflicting numbers, and or, as Kevin had stated, maybe we only put it in one spot. I'm not sure if you folks enjoy or find advantage of seeing my snapshot numbers, or if they're better they're better displayed from one spot only from Kelly.
I like seeing the monthly gallons being sold, and Kelly's report is quarterly.
Okay, well then I will work with Kelly. I will show her my numbers, and I will work with her so that we stay in sync and don't give conflicting information to the district.
I think another number that's helpful is just your cycles. I think that's a good one for the board and for me, for everyone to see how many truck cycles, how many GPU cycles. Those are always really, because it gives a flavor for activity on the ramp. So I think keep reporting those. Those are good numbers.
Okay.
The Jet A numbers are the same for Dave's report and your report. So just trying to figure things out. I'm a numbers geek. What can I say?
Understandable, and don't stop. I'll work with Kelly, and we'll get it figured out for the next month's discussion.
Great. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Any other questions?
Any more questions for Kelly? Nope. Thank you, Kelly. Okay, AVCOM services, that's Hardy.
Hi there. You have my report in front of you there. There's a couple different items on there and then some notes, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have. There's also the quarterlies, both on the communications and the the operations and comment report. So happy to answer any questions you may have and open it up to the group.
Anybody have questions?
I noticed that Surf Air and AirSF have now popped into commercial operators into the top 5, so we're getting more charter into that, which was interesting. Mountain Lion used to be one of the, they still are. Yeah. So that was just something of note. The other one is the monthly flight procedures update. I know that there's a 2-person shop. They've been focusing on 1634. And so the other flight procedures process and flying it are kind of on hold. Where are we at, and what can we expect?
We are, the forward progress is halted at this point. We are waiting for them to schedule flight validation. And so they need to put the flight validation package together, which is a lot of data submitted to Honeywell and then sent back to us, and our operator will put that into the cockpit, and then we'll do flight validation on the procedures. So until they are completed with their work on 1634, no forward work is happening right now.
So I'm asking, how is that? What does that schedule look like?
They have not given me a time frame to resume that. They said when they're completed with their work on 1634, they'll let me know, and then we'll move forward.
Okay, so maybe in May you can have sort of a schedule for us.
Yeah, I anticipate that some of the technical work they're doing on 1634 is coming to a close, or at least some of the exhibits and some of the heavy lifting. So I would expect to have a much more productive outlook for the May meeting for you, Mary.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
And just of the federal contract tower, what is this about?
I have been working for the last 2 years or so, still trying to work through congressional channels to get bill language added that would allow our airport to gain entry to the seasonal contract tower program. Mm-hmm. Our benefit cost ratio is over 1, so technically speaking, on the annual basis, we do indeed are qualified to enter that program. But we've been denied twice in official format from the FAA, so I've engaged our congressional support contractor, Scott Brenner, to work with Feinstein and Padilla's office to get some bill language in there that would allow us to use a benefit cost ratio calculation that takes into account our peak period activity in summer and winter. So we're hoping that we may have some traction there and that we could get in on a pro rata type of reimbursement activity for the tower, where instead of the airport paying 100%, the months that we are above a 1 BC ratio in the summer, the FAA would pay their pro rata share of that tower operation.
So, you know, that was how the tower was originally envisioned, was, you know, summer for those 3-4 months, and then again at Christmas holiday period. And, you know, on the off period, we're still paying $2,600 a day to have 2 to 3 people sitting up there. I went up there one Sunday when I think I saw 3 planes land. It was a windy day. And I'm just curious and kind of rethinking and talking. The idea came up that many of these people are, they're retired from the FAA. They already are retired, and they actually might be open to the idea of just part-time, that they weren't really looking for full-time jobs. And I just am putting that out for the board to think about at $2,600 a day when the winds, when we got a foot of snow, we're paying for that now out of our property tax. And is that the highest and best use? And if the staff up there is okay with that, if they're just looking for supplemental income during the summer period, because most of them live in Reno, and I definitely got the impression that they would be fine with that. And yes, there's a relearning curve at the beginning, but it's something for us to think about.
I mean, are you talking about like part-time throughout the day, or part-time like only a few months a year part-time?
For the month of the year, when we have lots of different traffic, when we have skydiving and soaring and jets but the other day when we had a foot of snow, we had 2 or 3 people sitting up there and the runway, and it's not open. And we have lots of days like that, or midweek. You know, I mean, in the shoulder seasons, we still are not getting the numbers. You know, working on the master plan, you see the numbers are, you know, we get what, half, 60% of our load in 3 months, in the 3 or 4 months. And I'm just throwing that out there for the board again to think about. Is this something, and if the tower is adequate, and particularly if the FAA would pay for it, should we not be thinking about the times we want to have people, 2 to 3 people up there, when there's no aircraft flying?
Well, Mary, you've
or very
always
few.
wanted to, you would like to shut the tower down.
Rick, don't put words in my mouth, because
yes,
I was there.
Because I've heard them from you. You want in the off season to shut the tower down.
In the off season, yeah, at $2,600 a day of property tax money. And I voted, and Rick, don't put words in my mouth, because I actually was on the board when we voted to put in a temporary tower in the summer to see if it made a difference.
Yeah, but you have suggested we back off in the shoulder season.
Yeah, I do.
And close the tower.
Don't go there, Rick. Don't put words in my mouth.
Well, I'll get
don't put words in my mouth, Rick, please.
I don't have to. You put them in.
It sounds like a discussion that we could have that's agendized.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It'd be a good workshop topic.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's worth talking about, but I think it's also worth.
Make sure when Shauna calls you to put that on your list.
Yes.
It'll be one of those meetings.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thanks for the discussion, and take any other questions on the report. And as usual, and also for the public listening in, staff with these reports are happy to answer questions offline. So if you call us, our name and number on the website, you can reach out to us and we'll answer any other additional questions you may have outside of this board meeting. So thanks for your time tonight.
Thanks, Hardy.
Just the context, $2,600 a day doesn't sound bad. $75,000 a month for potentially 5 months when there isn't that much traffic.
All right, let's talk to Shauna about that. Maybe we can talk about it in May. Be great. All right, Kevin, future agenda priorities.
Yeah, so I'm trying to, and I'll be doing some more work on the rolling agenda to really try and load a lot of stuff in here that's in my head that's kind of coming forward. So I've tried to already do that, but I'll really beef this up over the next week and a half, trying to make sure that anything that I can see coming down the pike is in here. But you have that, and as you can see, that May is a pretty robust meeting, but there's some room for some things in there because we're going to add a couple more items from this agenda. So that's all I would give you. That's all on that one, on that item.
Okay. All right. So it looks like we're about at the end. Is there any public comment before we move to closed session?
Yeah, this is Dan again. Sorry, I can't raise my hand. I just wanted to react to the comment about cutting back on the control tower. You know, I've been flying into Truckee for a very long time. The single biggest increase to safety has been that control tower. And weather's a bit fickle. It's sort of difficult to say, oh, today's a snow day, so let's not have controllers in the tower. Maybe that'll work, maybe it won't. But I think the board needs to be really thoughtful about anything that reduces the effectiveness of that control tower. That's been the single biggest improvement to aviation safety that we've ever done. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Sven, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you. And I'm all for fiscal responsibility, and I appreciate the comments of all the board and the speakers. I would point out, though, that there is sometimes an inverse relationship with fiscal austerity and safety, and that those times when the airport is least busy because of weather is when pilots are likely most vulnerable, and coming into that airport and eliminating the tower during those periods of time can actually, and probably would, dramatically increase risk to the pilots and the neighborhood. So I just urge caution that the fiscal aspect doesn't outweigh safety and good piloting thoughts around how a tower can help a pilot navigate safely to the ground. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Are we ready to move into closed session?
Wait, before we move into closed session, are we saying goodbye to Kevin? This is the end of
no, because we have to come back into open session and close the meeting.
Oh, okay.
Correct?
Okay. Then you have to hang around, Kevin.
Yeah, no, I'm not going anywhere.
See you May 3rd.
I'm not sure what this closed session is. This a continuation of your prior closed session, and who would you like in there? Is it just the board?
Yes.
The board.
And can we use Josh's numbers?
Yes, you can.
Josh has to be in there.
Yeah, Josh is in it. Yeah.
I'll be in there. Yeah.
So you'll go back to Josh's closed session, and then then I'll stick around and let me know when
Kevin,
you need me. Yeah.
Did you do your meeting review of the, how you summarize at the end?
But we can do I haven't done that yet. Yeah, meeting review and direction to staff. Do you want me to do that?
Please.
Perfect. So I have to bring back the Fly Quiet incentive, that 5-cent item, for the Fly Quiet 3, the 6 to 10, and we'll try and do May. But I'll talk with Rob and with Hardy on if that could be May or June, but that'll come back. Also, the landing fee staff report, that'll come back to a future meeting with a policy instruction around that for implementation. We'll work on the messaging. We'll talk with the ad hoc committee. We'll work on some of the messaging on outreach and also for future outreach meetings for the master plan. Also, you have the distinguishing with IFR, VFR, flight procedures, all those things. We'll work on that with the ad hoc committee. with Aviatrix. You also want me to revisit the ACT attendance for May and June. We have May, but for the June meeting. Also, the 220 discussion needs to come back in May. I had some other notes, but they're more for your workshops, like the tower conversation for workshop. But those are some things I have now that weren't in previously approved motions.
They did Jedi.
Yes, I have the Jedi also.
Yeah.
They'll come back
Okay.
with policy with all that. I have that on the rolling agenda for May already. So
Okay, great. Thank you.
yeah.
Okay. We'll see everybody in closed session. Not everybody, but
Yeah, so I'm just gonna, you're leaving to go to Josh's link, so anyone else that wants to stay and hear the report out from closed sessions or anything else or hear the end of the meeting can just stay right here, right? Is that accurate? Yeah.
That's correct. Thank you.
Hey.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.